The Men in Black are one of the most iconic symbols of the UFO phenomenon, even a staple of pop culture, popularized by the famous 1997 film starring Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones. One of my most favorite films of all time. I must have watched it like a dozen times. But the real-life stories of Men in Black are nothing like the movies. These figures are much more ominous, terrifying, antagonistic. They seem to show up after a UFO or alien encounter, only to threaten and intimidate the witnesses into never speaking about their experience again. Hey buddy, my name's Gregory and welcome to Tell Me More, the series where we explore the strange and unexplained. I used to believe that the Men in Black were really just Air Force officers in disguise, trying to deflect responsibility from the Air Force, and maybe some of these cases are exactly that. But after I looked further into some of these cases, I couldn't deny that some of these Men in Black encounters seemed somewhat uncanny. The agents acting quite inhuman. So are the stories true? What exactly are the Men in Black? On June 27, 1947, Harold Dahl was on a boat with his son and his dog near Maury Island, Washington State, when suddenly 6 donut-shaped UFOs appeared in the sky above them. One quickly descended on the boat and began raining molten metallic debris down, hitting his son and his dog. After collecting some of the slag and telling his supervisor and a few other people about what happened to him, Harold was approached by a man wearing a black suit. This agent described to Harold in great detail the exact series of events that he witnessed, as if he was there himself, claiming, "What I have said is proof to you that I know a great deal more about this experience of yours than you will want to believe." Harold Dahl was warned by this man wearing black to never speak of this experience again, because if he did, bad things would happen. This was the first recorded time that somebody who witnessed a UFO was approached by a man in a black suit, warning them to stay silent. But it certainly wouldn't be the last. Over the following decades, hundreds of similar cases would be reported by people who claimed to have witnessed different supernatural phenomenon. Alien encounters, UFO sightings, even the Mothman saga includes several visits from Men in Black who made similar threats. The most common series of events would start with somebody witnessing a strange craft floating in the sky, only to then be chased off by a series of black, unmarked helicopters, and then a few days later they would receive a visit from strange characters wearing black suits. Though not every incident is identical, there are several defining features of your classic Men in Black encounter, and they're always negative. They usually wear extremely simple black suits, often with a fedora or tribly, in perfect immaculate condition, much like an FBI agent would have worn in the 1960s. Their demeanor is stiff and methodical, their faces expressionless, and their voice stern and serious. They don't usually identify as being agents of any particular branch of the military or government, but sometimes lie and say that they work for different private organizations. And they would always drive older black cars, spotless, in perfect condition. Everything about these characters was a little bit uncanny. Slightly off. Not quite normal. People who encountered the Men in Black would often describe them as acting somewhat autonomous, like a robot, and somehow they would seem to know things that they shouldn't be able to know, like they were able to witness events through windows in time. But not every encounter perfectly fits this criteria. It seems that the Men in Black have evolved quite a bit over the years. If you want to go all the way back to the beginning, there have always been figures threatening UFO and alien witnesses since Roswell and other subsequent UFO encounters that rocked the United States. At first, it was apparently the Air Force attempting to silence people, or at least people pretending to be the Air Force. See, the Air Force would go on to deny any knowledge of these encounters, which led many people to speculate that it wasn't really them. These characters would appear wearing unmarked uniforms, sometimes black with no visible rank. The 1940s and 50s is when they start to look like FBI agents, but in the 1960s we start to see them evolve a little bit. This is when witnesses would start to describe them as acting somewhat uncanny or robotic. During the Mothman saga in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, locals would describe the men in black as being completely bald with no eyelashes or eyebrows. At a diner one evening, an agent was apparently swallowing entire mouthfuls of his steak dinner without chewing. And the 1970s is where we see the strangest variations of the men in black. Not only are they bald, but they also have striking features like high cheekbones, pointed chins, angled eyes, tiny noses, barely any lips, almost like they're a type of gray alien. In 1975, two young men witnessed a series of strange UFOs. Afterwards, they visited Dr. Herbert Hopkins, a medical doctor, who performed hypnosis on them to help them remember the series of events. Shortly afterwards, Dr. Hopkins said that he was visited by a single man in black who perfectly fit that alien-like description. He never moved his head or neck, never changed his facial expression, was very stiff and robotic with his mannerisms and speech. Dr. Herbert described the men in black as having a small pug nose and tiny ears that were set very far back. He also had red paint on his lips to hide the fact that they were just a perfect slit. With no reason to be able to know, the agent told Dr. Hopkins, "There are 2 coins in your left pocket. Take one of the coins out of your pocket and hold it in your hand. Watch the coin." Dr. Hopkins described watching a copper penny in his hand turn silver, then blue, and then he started having trouble focusing on the coin, until eventually it was just gone. The agent then reminded Dr. Hopkins about Betty and Barney Hill from the famous UFO encounter in 1961. The man in black explained that Barney Hill died not because of a heart attack, but he died because, quote, "he knew too much, so he no longer has a heart, just like you no longer have a coin." The agent ordered Dr. Hopkins to destroy all documents that had anything to do with UFO encounters and to never share any of his information with anyone. The agent said that he would know if the doctor had done so. The most famous modern Men in Black encounter happened in Niagara Falls in 2008. A hotel manager, Shane Sauvere, along with a security guard, reported seeing a large triangular craft floating outside of the hotel. A few weeks later, 2 tall, bald men in black showed up at the hotel demanding to see the employees who witnessed the UFO. But they weren't there. 3 hotel staff interacted with these figures, claiming that they were terrifying everyone in the lobby. In this case, we have security footage showing these agents entering the building. This is the actual footage Sauvere submitted. But there are scarier encounters with the men in black. Times that it seems that they completely forgot how to behave like a human. Times that they were laughing and playing on a swing, or even singing to a bird in a tree. Sometimes the men in black are described as if they're wearing fake human skin like a suit, and the suit that they're wearing is perfectly pressed and looks like it's never been worn before, like it was taken right off of a mall mannequin. Some people say that it looks like they're wearing the skin of a dead human. Truly terrifying. If you're new here and you're enjoying what you're seeing so far, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell now so you never miss another episode. I upload new content every Thursday. And also be sure to check out the Tell Me More playlist for hours of content to keep you entertained and thinking. To see an extension of this video describing a couple more Men in Black stories and the strangest theory about what they could be, head on over to my Patreon. It's easy to speculate as to what these figures could be. Most people in the UFO community come to the conclusion that there's some sort of an alien pretending to be a human, or maybe an alien-human hybrid, or some sort of autonomous being, all of which trying to intimidate people into never talking about UFO or alien activity here on Earth. But why would they do this? What investment do these aliens have in making sure that we don't discuss UFO sightings or share evidence about encounters with aliens? This practice of threatening people into silence holds so many implications. Perhaps these are some sort of alien overlords who are secretly ruling over us, maintaining the planet as some sort of zoo or like a farm. Maybe we're some sort of an experiment. Maybe we're supposed to figure out the universe on our own, develop ourselves without outside interference. The Men in Black might be one of the ways that they maintain the illusion that we're alone in the universe. Or maybe the military knows that aliens exist, but they're actively trying to discourage them from visiting us. Or maybe they're even hunting them down. Maybe there are aliens among us in hiding, and they occasionally slip up and let their presence be known. So they send these agents to us in an attempt to keep a low profile and deflect interest in UFOs and aliens. Or maybe the military and aliens are working together, and what we sometimes witness is their joint task forces performing operations in our skies. And in an effort to hide the fact that the military has known about aliens for years, a collection of different types of agents are sent out to deal with people who might spread information about their top secret dealings. The threats that these witnesses have claimed to receive from the Men in Black are sometimes quite bone-chilling, vivid, colorful. In one case, after collecting a piece of metal from a UFO crash and sending it off to a laboratory to be tested, a man claimed to have been visited by two Men in Black who threatened him by saying, quote, "If you want your wife to stay as pretty as she is, then you'd better get that piece of metal back." That's These encounters are so vivid, fantastical, and certainly seem out of this world. But that doesn't mean that these have to be aliens. There are very few real photos of Men in Black in circulation, aside from that security footage from Niagara Falls. The only other example is this image of a man in a black suit standing in a doorway, taken at quite a good distance. This doesn't really look like an alien to me. Think about it. If the sole purpose of the Men in Black is to get people to stop talking about their UFO encounters, they're pretty terrible at it. See, human behavior is pretty predictable. Everybody likes to think that they're special, and a lot of people like to share every crazy detail of every crazy story that's ever happened to them. And if you introduce a bizarre alien-like person into the mix, one who validates the already crazy story about seeing a UFO by threatening them into never talking about it again, what do you think they're going to do? It's only going to encourage them to talk about it even more. And that's what seems to happen every time. And the Men in Black never seem to come back to make good on their threats. One UFO researcher who studied over 1,600 Men in Black encounters, all of which negative, including threats to never talk again. In most of these cases, the Men in Black are never seen again. And we only know that the Men in Black are uncanny because that's the way they're described. We don't know for sure that they're actually synthetic, robotic, alien-like creatures. For all we know, they're just actors and prosthetics and makeup. So who are they really? A branch of the Air Force? If that's true, why would a military agency invest so much time and resources into pretending to be aliens to threaten people into not talking about aliens? Well, the majority of these cases date back to the Cold War era, as many of the stories in this series do. If you see a giant black diamond floating in the sky one night, and the next day a bunch of Air Force officers show up at your door and tell you to never speak about what you saw again, it's pretty likely that you're going to tell everybody that a bunch of Air Force officers threatened you after you saw the Air Force testing some kind of strange new technology. That looks bad for the Air Force, and it reveals some of the capabilities of their top secret technology. But if a couple of alien-like men show up at your door, acting like weird robots, threatening you to never talk about what you saw in the sky, you offer them a cup of tea and they graciously accept and immediately pour it directly into their briefcase, chances are you're going to be inclined to believe that what you saw was an alien craft. And you're probably going to tell everyone that a couple of alien-like men showed up at your door and threatened you to never talk about alien ships. The whole process manipulates the way you think about the event. Now, the Air Force has plausible deniability about threatening its own citizens, and it deflects everybody's thoughts about the technology that they saw, making them think that it's otherworldly. And because the average person had no idea just how advanced the military's secret technology was during that era, it wasn't hard to convince people that what they saw was from another planet. And it also legitimizes the claims that these witnesses are making, and adds a boost to their ego, making them feel special enough to even warrant a threat to stop talking about what they saw in the first place. I mean, they know you're gonna talk about it anyways. you're only human. So the best they can do is change the way that you're thinking about it so that what you say doesn't actually reveal the truth. Tell me what you guys think. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my second channel, Armored Gregory, where I do follow-up vlogs responding to some of my favorite comments. And be sure to check out our podcast, Full Metal Tuxedo, where my co-creator, Patrice, and I discuss more of the kinds of things I talk about in this series, the strange and unexplained. And of course, I'd like to thank my patrons and channel members for supporting my content. I couldn't do this without you. You're amazing.